It's the Cali Griot. I tell you all the time, I want to teach you what I know before I go. Well, I realized why I got so upset with Boss putting in all that information about Delta's criminal history. I had a professor. Look, you ever heard of a trigger? I got triggered. Emotionally triggered. I was emotionally triggered. Look, when I was back in 1977, that's me with that afro. See that? That's me. When I was in college. I was in college at Cal State. I was doing my photography, and I was in Pan-African Studies Department. Yeah, in Pan-African Studies Department. I was in the art department doing jewelry, you know. I don't even have on any jewelry right now, hardly. I was in the art department doing jewelry. I was doing goldsmithing and silversmithing. And I had pretty much stopped playing the flute because I really wanted to do professional. And they were saying that you needed to have all the horns. Like if you were going to play for Hollywood on a set, they wanted you to be able to play jazz, blues, all the genres. And you needed to have the flute, the sax, the tenor sax, the alto sax, and the bari sax. And at the time, I didn't know how to play any sax. I do now. So, at the university, I had this professor. His name was Sweet Ernie Smith. Sweet Ernie Smith had a criminal history. Boss, I hope you hear this, boss. I got a story to tell. This time is my story to tell. Oh, my goodness. Okay, so I'm at Cal State University at LA. Now, I came from my little city. And there was 2 sisters in the class. And they saw me in there with this Farrah Fawcett hairdo. And they said, ooh, I don't think she knows who she is. I'm speaking on proper. I spoke proper English at the proper English time. And I was in the university and I was speaking proper English. Trying to be bougie, I guess. Y'all call it. And I was in the child development department. Well, I started noticing a difference in language with my little cousin in LA and the way I spoke, being raised by a white mother. Where if I said, oh, I had this little friend named Ellen Ann around the corner from me. So I went over to her house and she said, oh, if you don't shut that door and get that up off the floor. Yeah, I was like, oh, I like that, right? So I go home and I try this. So I said, Mama, shut the door. She said, what? It's door, not dough. Bam. See, I got abused to speak proper English. See, y'all think it's all fun and games being a half-breed. It's not. You would get abused to speak proper English. And I mean abused. Popped in the mouth type. To me, that's abuse. Popped me in my mouth. Then I said something about, oh, I was playing jacks on the flow. On the flow, it's not flow, and it's not dough. It's floor and door. See? That wasn't no joke. I gotta let my dogs out. Whoops. I was all hooked up to my thing. So, this class I had, right? It was called EBONICS. And the reason the professor called it Ebonics was because black, that by definition, if you go into a dictionary type of definition, is going to be, as he said, a negative definition. So if right there, it's going to say that you're not speaking English properly if you say black English. So he put phonics and ebonics, ebony and phonics. And that's where ebonics, he birthed the name ebonics. He's the one that birthed it. Like, I'm a shayologist. You want to play about shea butter, but it's actually very medicinal if you use it the way that I do. I didn't take it as just, oh, it's some stuff that's going to, It has medicinal properties. The tree, from the root to the bark, like bark on a tree. Bark has properties in it, just like the leaves do, the roots do. On all kinds of plants. So I made the word shayologist. If I'm gonna do anything, I'm gonna do it, and this is who I am. I'm a shayologist, and I'm also apothecary. See, I didn't even know I was apothecary. I didn't know about that word. I had made my own before I found out that I was really apothecary too. So anyway, so now that's because I'm old and I got sick and I needed to make my own pain medicine. All right, because I went down the other road. So now back to this. Why I got so pissed off about using criminal history, because Ernie had been put in special needs. Special needs. The dude's brilliant, just brilliant. He was like Malcolm X, though. See, he got in all kind of stuff, forgery, pimping and pandering. I think, all kind. That's why they call him Sweet Ernie, like a pimp. Like the pimp game, Sweet Ernie Smith. Yeah, well, I met Sweet Ernie at the university teaching Ebonics. Yeah, he was teaching Ebonics. I'm going to show you. I pulled some up. I'll show you what the class was like. Hold up. I got it. Hold on. And let the dogs so they can get in and out. Excuse me. This is Ernie. Hear that flute?
Welcome to this first presentation on the historical development of African American language. I'm going to go right on into the discussion of the major theory that has been put forth on the historical development of African American speech, and that is what's called the Creole. And what I'm going to introduce to you today is another perspective that we want you to comprehend in order to understand the infusion of Afrocentric measures in curriculum into the existing curriculum in the school district, and that is the Niger-Congo Ebonics or ethno-linguistic theory. The funded theory that has been put forth by the African American language has been what is called the Creole hypothesis. This theory, what is separate or autonomous languages? A lingua franca. A lingua franca merely means a common language that is used by people who cannot communicate with each other in their mother tongues or their native language. In case of then merging two languages together, the result is that you get what's called a hybrid language, and this hybrid language is called a pidgin. It is a mixed speech, and so often in the literature you will find the word mishpracha, meaning mixed speech. This hybrid pidgin language is supposed to be a blend. If you speak language A and someone else speaks language B, then it would represent basically language A with some language B in it, or for the speaker of language B, they're speaking language B with a little language A in it. This is a hybrid language, and it's referred to as a pidgin. What the theory is that these pidgin languages that emerge as a result of the convergence of European and African languages, primarily the Portuguese, the Spanish, the French, the Dutch, and the English. Those are the four major Western European languages.
See, he's the one that took me to go see Dr. Francis Cress Wellesley.
They say that these pidgin languages developed on the coast of Africa as a transactional or trade lingua franca. All pidgins are lingua francas. Why? Because they facilitate communication for people who cannot speak to each other in their mother tongues. And so these pidgins then serve as a facilitator. But while all pidgins are lingua francas, not all lingua francas are pidgins.
Come on, Ernie.
For example, you had learned to speak language C, and I had learned to speak language C before we ever met each other. Since we both know how to speak language C, then language C would be able to we would be able to facilitate communication with each other through the use of language C. Portuguese was considered one of the first major trade lingua francas during the early colonial period, and French at that same time was considered to be a major diplomatic lingua franca, meaning that people who spoke
Jesus. And I don't mean that literally.
Either Portuguese pidgin or had learned to speak French, and as a result, they were able to conduct trade and commerce and diplomatic affairs in these autonomous languages that they had learned to speak. They were not hybrids. They were languages such as French or some other language that would facilitate communication. The Portuguese pidgin, however, was considered to be more of a mixed speech because it had elements of Portuguese in it. Let me go a little further with this. When you have a pidgin now learned as a person's native language or mother tongue, that is, subsequent generations, if you spoke language B and you came to live in an area where language A is the dominant language, but now you're no longer exposed to the autochthonous language A. Autochthonous meaning the language spoken on the continent.
See, they try to attack Ernie with his criminal history. It's what y'all don't know. I saw the attack in a courtroom because he was used as an expert witness in a crime, in a pimping and pandering crime. And they had the man record it, and he interpreted for the jury.
Autochthonous Africans then are born in Africa. Those born outside of Africa would be Africans in diaspora. And what we're saying then is that those Africans who were born in the diaspora, not exposed to the autochthonous African languages, are theoretically said to have acquired these pidgin languages as their native languages or mother tongues. And when you learn a pidgin or acquire a pidgin language as your mother tongue, you are by definition considered to be speaking Creole. Now, let's go to some specific African languages because that's important. In the book Africanisms in the Gullah Dialect, Lorenzo Turner, in his text, points out the areas that Africans were primarily brought from. He says here on chapter 1, page 1 here, the slaves brought to South Carolina and Georgia direct from Africa came principally from a section along the west coast extending from Senegal to Angola. The important areas involved were Senegal, Gambia, Sierra Leone, Liberia, the Gold Coast, Togo, Dahomey, Nigeria, and Angola. And today, the vocabulary of color.
He was a mean tester.
In the following languages. He gives you the ethnic specific roots from African.
But he gave you a reverse
and that is the Wolof, Malinki,
test.
Dinka, Bambara,
If you listen to me talk, I told you it was an IQ test. He made an IQ test, a black IQ test, and basically segregation.
And it is here that the Niger-Congo ethno-linguistic view differs.
The language is split.
Creole hypothesis. The Creole hypothesis argues that the Pidgin and Creole languages that
and that's why the house and the field always spoke differently.
And the French and the Dutch and
the segregation.
Colonials, that they
And we didn't have nothing to do with that, right?
Invented or created language is baby talk, and that this simplified version of the European
This is only 11 minutes, y'all. Hold on. Hold on.
or native language of the African Americans. That is the Creole hypothesis. That theory is rejected by those who put forth the Niger-Congo Ebonics or ethno-linguistic theory, because they argue that the differences that consistently and presently exist in African American speech can be traced to these very Niger-Congo languages. In other words, you're arguing discontinuity. You're claiming that the Africans broke with the African linguistic tradition and adopted a simplified version of a European language, yet when we look at the differences that presently exist in the speech of slave descendants of African America of African origin in the diaspora today, we find consistently evidence of those differences continuing to exist. What are these differences?
Break it down, sweet Ernie.
The differences that you will find can be shown in the work of Peter Ladderfoger. He did a study of the West African languages. You will see some of the same ethnic groups related to the...
So you see, those are teachers in his classroom.
Languages that I had just mentioned in the Africanisms and the Gullah dialect.
A lot of teachers would go to Ernie once they realize how racist that they've been in their grading. Black teachers have to learn that too, because we're all brainwashed the same way.
He says that many West African languages, including most of the Kwa group, can be considered to have no consonant clusters. The decision as to whether to regard members of a particular sequence of consonants as single phonemic units or as clusters is, of course, often arbitrary.
This is important.
Include in Table 1 all of the contrasting consonants in at least those languages that have a simple CV structure. What Ladderfoger is sharing with us here.
This is important about the consonant blends.
Tend to have a very strong consonant vowel phonemic pattern. Again, what he says is that many West African languages, including most of the what's called the Kwa group, can be considered to have no consonant clusters. And that is, any two or more consonants together in a sequence,
like SCH,
or consonant cluster. He says that as a rule, in West African languages,
like school, you would never see a consonant blend like that. ST, West, that's the consonant blend.
Cluster configuration. That the tendency is that there is this CV, CV, CV vocalic pattern. What is the result of this CV, CV vocalic pattern? By what is called in linguistics relexification. That is, when you speak a language but you don't know the phonology or the grammar rules of that language, the tendency is that speakers of languages,
you just hear it,
will tend to retain the phonological structure of their mother tongue, and they will borrow words from the target language. In other words, knowing a language means more than just knowing the sounds of that language or knowing the vocabulary. What you need to know is how to shape words with that sound system, how to make past tense and
that's phonics.
Out of the verbs of that language. How do you modify
Ebonics.
Put the adjective in front or after the noun? If you don't know the grammar or the verb system of the language, then you're not considered to be a speaker of that language as a native speaker's intuition.
And that's why we need
and what we have here is a concept called relexification. That is borrowing
money to teach black children, inner city children, all black children, English. Because English is not the first language.
What did I say? Drito jello. Did you eat your jello? But you notice the strong...
Okay, let me see what I did with my little remote here. Hopefully I could turn it off for it. All right, there we go. Sorry about the lighting right now. Let me get it for y'all. That was Sweet Ernie. That was Sweet Ernie Smith. That was my professor.